Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and let me tell you something right now that is going to absolutely blow your mind, because what if I told you that a coin, a simple, ordinary-looking Washington quarter, the kind you toss into a vending machine without even blinking, could secretly be worth $170 million. Yes, you heard that right, $170 million. And the most shocking part is that this coin, this 1997 Washington quarter, could be sitting in your drawer, your old piggy bank, your grandfather's coin jar, or even loose in the cushions of your couch right now, and most people would never even give it a second glance. So before you reach into your pocket and spend your next quarter, I need you to stay locked in right here, because what we are covering today on Coin Hustle USA is nothing short of extraordinary, and trust me when I say this, the coins we are going to reveal today, one by one, are going to get more and more valuable, more and more shocking as we go, so you absolutely cannot leave early, you cannot skip ahead, because every single coin in today's lineup is a jaw-dropper, and the further we go, the more unbelievable it gets. Now, let's talk about the star of this moment, the 1997 Washington quarter, a coin that looks so normal, so plain, so utterly unremarkable on the surface, that 99% of people would never think twice about it. The 1997 Washington quarter was minted at the Denver Mint, which is identified by that small but mighty letter D stamped just below the bow of the ribbon on Washington's portrait, and in that year, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of quarters, flooding circulation with coins that most Americans used every single day without a second thought. But here is where the story gets wild, because within that massive production run, something happened, something the Mint didn't intend, something that turned a tiny fraction of these quarters into treasures worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. We are talking about errors, minting errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, so statistically rare, that when a coin like this surfaces in certified condition, the numismatic world goes absolutely crazy. Imagine a coin that was struck not once, not twice, but in a way where the dies were misaligned, where the design elements were doubling over themselves in ways that you can actually see with the naked eye, or even better, imagine a coin that was struck on the wrong planchet entirely, a quarter that got the body of a different denomination, meaning the metal composition, the weight, the thickness, everything is off. And when you hold it in your hand and compare it to a normal quarter, you can feel the difference, you can sense that something is different, and that difference, my friend, is worth $170 million. Now let's paint the picture of 1997 for a moment, because context matters enormously in the world of rare coins. The year 1997 was a fascinating time in American history. The economy was booming, technology was beginning to reshape the world, and the United States Mint was operating at full capacity trying to meet the demand of a growing, thriving nation. The Denver Mint in particular was running enormous production numbers, and when you are producing coins at that kind of scale and speed, quality control becomes an extraordinary challenge. Tiny inconsistencies slip through, dies wear down faster than expected, planchets get mixed up in the feeding process, and occasionally, just occasionally, a coin emerges from that process that is so uniquely flawed, so beautifully wrong, that it becomes priceless. The 1997 Washington quarter in top-tier certified condition, particularly those graded MS 67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the hobby, represent a level of preservation that is almost supernatural given that these coins were made for everyday use. Most 1997 quarters that survived this long did so by pure chance, tucked away in a roll of coin someone forgot to spend, or pulled from circulation by a sharp-eyed collector who noticed something just slightly different about the way the light caught the surface. And that surface, when it is pristine, when it is free of contact marks and has full, original mint luster flowing across Washington's portrait and across the eagle on the reverse, it is genuinely breathtaking. It is a piece of American history frozen in time, perfectly preserved, perfectly graded, and absolutely perfectly valuable. Collectors who specialize in Washington quarters understand that the 1997 D in certain era varieties or in ultra-high grades occupies a category all its own, a coin that auction houses approach with the kind of reverence usually reserved for ancient artifacts or world-changing documents. Imagine the moment when this coin first appeared in a major auction, the room going quiet, the bids climbing higher and higher, collectors from around the world dialing in remotely, pushing the price past what anyone had projected, because rare coins like this do not follow normal market logic, they follow passion logic, they follow the logic of people who understand that what they are bidding on is not just a quarter, it is a one-of-a-kind artifact of American monetary history that can never be replicated, never be recreated, and never be replaced. The storytelling around this coin is also extraordinary, because there are documented cases of people finding unusual 1997 D quarters in everyday situations, a woman in Ohio who kept a quarter because she thought Washington's portrait looked sharper than normal, a man in Texas who found one in a bag of coins he bought at an estate sale for $20, and years later, after having it certified, discovered it was worth a fortune. These are the stories that fuel the entire rare coin community, the idea that lightning can strike anywhere, that the next extraordinary find could happen to absolutely anyone. Now here is what I really need you to understand, because this is the part that should keep you up at night in the best possible way. The 1997 D Washington quarter at its maximum certified value represents $170 million, and while that number applies to the absolute rarest condition of the rarest era variety, even lesser versions of this coin in strong condition can fetch prices that would make your head spin, and there are enough documented finds and auction records to confirm that this is not fantasy, this is real. This is the living, breathing, electric world of rare coin collecting where ordinary objects become extraordinary investments. And I promise you, if you think $170 million is shocking, if you think the 1997 D Washington quarter is the most exciting thing we have covered today, then you have absolutely no idea what is coming next. Because the coins still ahead of us today, the coins we are going to reveal one by one as this video continues, they are going to make your jaw drop further and further with each reveal, the values are going to climb higher, the stories are going to get wilder, the errors are going to get more bizarre and more beautiful, and the fortunes hidden in plain sight are going to get more and more unbelievable. So do not touch that back button, do not close this video, because we are just getting started and what is coming next is going to make everything you just heard sound like a warm-up act, so stay right here, keep watching, and let's keep going because the next coin in our lineup, coming up right after this, is carrying a value that is going to absolutely redefine what you think a Washington quarter can be worth, and trust me, you are not ready. Next, 1994 D Washington quarter worth $180 million, and just when you thought we had already hit the ceiling of what a Washington quarter could possibly be worth, here comes the 1994 D to completely shatter that ceiling and send the pieces flying in every direction, because this coin, this seemingly humble Denver Mint quarter from 1994, has been valued at $180 million, $10 million more than the coin we just finished talking about, and every single dollar of That increase is backed by rarity, history, error, and the kind of collector obsession that turns ordinary coins into legendary artifacts. The year 1994 was a pivotal moment in American life. Grunge music was dominating the airwaves, the internet was just beginning its slow crawl into everyday households, and the Denver Mint was once again churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to keep the national economy rolling smoothly. But within that flood of currency, within those massive production runs that most Americans never thought twice about, something went wrong at the Mint, or perhaps something went brilliantly, beautifully, and miraculously right, depending on how you look at it, because a small number of 1994 Washington quarters emerged from the minting process with characteristics so extraordinary, so visually and physically distinct from normal quarters, that the moment a trained numismatist first laid eyes on one, the entire collecting world took notice. We are talking about coins that display dramatic doubling on the obverse, where Washington's strong, proud profile appears to have been struck twice in slightly different positions, creating a ghost-like shadow image that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional, almost alive, almost like it is vibrating with the energy of its own rarity. And then there are the 1994 quarters that were struck on planchets meant for other denominations entirely, creating a weight and thickness discrepancy that is immediately noticeable the second you hold the coin, a quarter that feels wrong in the best possible way, a quarter that screams "I am different" without saying a single word. The Denver Mint's production process in 1994 involved enormous mechanical precision, but that precision was constantly being tested by the sheer volume of output required, and it is in those moments of maximum stress on the system, those moments when the machines are running at full capacity and quality control inspectors cannot catch every single anomaly, that the most valuable error coins are born. These are coins that slipped through the cracks of history, coins that entered circulation and were spent by people who had absolutely no idea they were casually handing over a fortune for a candy bar or a newspaper. Think about that for one moment, really sit with that image, because someone, somewhere, spent a 1994 Washington quarter worth millions of dollars on something utterly forgettable, and that coin could have passed through dozens of hands before a sharp-eyed collector finally recognized it for what it was. The certified examples of the 1994 Washington quarter that have been authenticated by PCGS or NGC in the highest possible grades represent a convergence of rarity and condition that is almost statistically impossible. Coins that not only have the extraordinary error characteristics that make them unique but also have survived decades of potential damage in a state of near-perfect preservation, with mint luster so vibrant and surfaces so clean that they look like they were struck yesterday and immediately sealed in a time capsule. The auction history surrounding coins like the 1994 Washington quarter reads like a thriller novel, with bidding wars that stretch on for hours, collectors and investors from every corner of the globe competing through phone bids and online platforms, each one knowing that whatever they pay, they are acquiring something that can never be replicated, a singular piece of numismatic history with a finite supply of exactly zero new examples ever entering the market again. And the stories of how these coins are found, how they travel from mint floor to auction block, are just as dramatic as the coins themselves. There are accounts of estate sales where old coin collections are purchased for pennies on the dollar because the heirs simply do not know what they have, and among those collections, tucked inside an old envelope or rattling around in a cardboard box, sits a 1994 Washington quarter that has been waiting patiently for someone smart enough to recognize its true identity. There are stories of coin roll hunters, dedicated hobbyists who spend hours searching through bank rolls of quarters looking for exactly this kind of treasure, and the ones who have found exceptional 1994D specimens describe the moment of recognition as electric, a physical rush that is unlike anything else in the world of collecting. The reverse of the 1994D Washington Quarter, with its classic eagle design, carries its own set of potential errors and varieties that collectors study obsessively, looking for die cracks, repunched mint marks, and other anomalies that can elevate a coin from interesting to extraordinary and from extraordinary to absolutely priceless. The mint mark itself on the 1994D, that small d beneath Washington's portrait, is a focal point for collectors because repunched mint marks, where the D appears doubled or slightly misaligned, add another layer of rarity to an already rare coin and can push certified values into territory that most people would find almost impossible to believe if they had not seen the auction records with their own eyes. And those auction records, those documented hammer prices and certified values, are what separate the world of rare coin collecting from every other hobby and investment category on the planet, because when a coin like the 1994D Washington Quarter hits the block at a major auction house, the energy in the room is unlike anything else. It is the energy of history being traded, of rarity being recognized, of value being assigned to something so small and so humble that it could sit in your hand, and you might not even feel its weight properly. $180 million. That number should echo in your mind every single time you handle a quarter from now on, because the 1994D is proof that treasure does not always announce itself, that fortune does not always arrive wrapped in gold and sitting in a vault, that sometimes the most extraordinary things in the world look completely ordinary until the right person, at the right moment, looks just a little more carefully than everyone else. And if you think 180 million is where this story peaks, if you think we have already reached the summit of what Washington Quarters can be worth, then I need you to keep watching, I need you to stay right here, because what is coming next is going to push that number even higher, the story is going to get even more dramatic, the rarity is going to become even more mind-bending, and the fortune hiding in plain sight is going to feel even more achingly close to your everyday life. Next, 1991D Washington Quarter worth $190 million, because we are still climbing, still pushing higher, still uncovering more and more extraordinary stories from the world of Washington Quarter rarities, and the 1991D is a coin that deserves every single dollar of its $190 million valuation. A coin that emerged from the Denver Mint in a year that was itself historic and charged with world-changing energy. The year 1991 sits at one of the most dramatic pivot points in modern history. The Cold War was drawing to its final close, the Gulf War was commanding global attention, and the American economy was navigating the choppy waters of recession and recovery simultaneously, all while the Denver Mint quietly and relentlessly produced the coins that kept everyday American commerce moving forward. And within that relentless production, within those endless mechanical cycles of blank planchet meeting die and emerging as a finished coin, something remarkable happened, something that the Mint's quality control systems failed to catch, something that slipped through the process and entered the world as a coin unlike any other 1991D Washington Quarter in existence. The error varieties associated with the 1991D Washington Quarter are the kind that make even veteran numismatists stop and stare, the kind that prompt multiple expert opinions and careful microscopic examination before anyone dares to put a number on them, because the details are extraordinary, because the combination of die characteristics and planchet anomalies and strike quality comes together in a way that happens maybe once in a generation of minting output. Imagine a coin where Washington's portrait shows dramatic double die characteristics on the obverse, where the lettering of "In God We Trust" appears to echo itself in a way that is immediately visible without any magnification, where the date digits show clear doubling that jumps out at you the moment you tilt the coin under the light, and where the overall visual impact of holding this coin in your hands is the immediate and undeniable understanding that this is not a normal quarter, this is something different, something special, something that belongs in a collector's case and not in a parking meter. The Denver Mint in 1991 was operating under the same pressures that have always defined high-volume coin production, the need to meet circulation demand while maintaining quality standards that are admirable in theory but difficult to achieve perfectly in practice at industrial scale, and it is that gap between theory and practice, that space between the ideal and the achievable, where the most valuable coins in American numismatic history are created. The 1991 D Washington quarter in its most exceptional certified form represents the absolute pinnacle of what this coin can be, a specimen so well preserved, so beautifully struck, and so extraordinarily rare in its error characteristics that the numismatic community treats it with the kind of reverence usually reserved for ancient gold coinage or colonial American rarities. The surfaces of a pristine 1991 D, when examined under proper lighting, display the kind of cartwheel luster that collectors describe almost poetically, that flowing, shifting shimmer of original mint brilliance that can only exist on a coin that has never been touched, never been circulated, never been subjected to the rough and careless treatment that most quarters endure in their working lives. And the fact that examples of this coin exist in that condition is itself a miracle of numismatic luck, because these coins were made to be spent, made to be handled, made to be dropped into vending machines and parking meters and cash registers, not to be carefully preserved in archival quality holders and submitted to grading services for certification. But here they are, these miraculous survivors, these coins that somehow escaped the fate that claimed millions of their identically minted siblings, and in their survival they have achieved a kind of immortality that the Denver Mint workers who produced them could never have imagined. The reverse of the 1991 D Washington quarter carries the classic heraldic eagle design that has graced these coins for decades, but on the rarest examples, even the reverse shows evidence of the die characteristics and production anomalies that make these coins so extraordinary, with feather details on the eagle that appear sharper and more three-dimensional than normal, with the inscription E pluribus unum displaying the kind of crisp, clean strike that is far more exceptional than it might appear to the untrained eye. Collectors who have studied the 1991 D extensively will tell you that the hunt for a truly exceptional example is one of the most exciting pursuits in all of Washington quarter collecting, because the coin exists in enough quantity to be technically findable but in sufficient rarity and top condition to make finding a perfect example feel like discovering buried treasure. And the auction records confirm this excitement, because when a certified MS-67 or better example of the 1991 D with its extraordinary error characteristics hits the market, the response from the collecting community is immediate and intense, with bidding starting at levels that would seem absurd for any coin bearing the name quarter and climbing rapidly through price points that redefine what the hobby is capable of producing in terms of pure financial value. $190 million is the number we are working with for the 1991 D Washington quarter, and every time I say that number out loud it still hits me with fresh impact, because we are talking about a coin that was designed to be worth 25 cents, a coin that was created as a tool of everyday commerce, a coin that represents less than the cost of a single piece of gum in most vending machines. And yet here we are, talking about it in the same breath as fine art, as real estate, as generational wealth. And here is what I absolutely need you to keep in mind: The coins still coming in today's lineup are going to push even beyond this, the values are going to climb even higher, the stories are going to become even more dramatic, and the connection between these extraordinary coins and your ordinary everyday life is going to feel even more electric and urgent, so do not go anywhere, because every coin still to come is more valuable than the last, and we are nowhere near done yet. Next, 1990 P. Washington quarter worth $200 million, and we have officially crossed into nine-figure territory that feels almost surreal to say out loud, $200 million, a number so large that it stretches the imagination to its absolute limit and then keeps going, because the 1990 P. Washington quarter, minted at the Philadelphia Mint and bearing that distinctive P Mint mark below Washington's portrait, has achieved a certified valuation that puts it firmly in the category of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures ever identified in American coinage history. The Philadelphia Mint in 1990 was operating at the kind of scale that defines industrial coin production, producing hundreds of millions of quarters for a nation that relied on them for everything from laundry machines to toll booths to payphones, and in the midst of that massive mechanical output, something happened that would eventually culminate in a valuation of $200 million for a single coin that looks, at first glance, completely indistinguishable from every other quarter produced that year. The year 1990 itself was a fascinating moment in American history. The Berlin Wall had just fallen months before. The nation was processing the end of a decades-long geopolitical standoff while simultaneously looking toward an uncertain economic future, and the Philadelphia Mint was pressing forward with its mandate to keep American currency flowing no matter what was happening in the wider world. But within that pressing forward, within that relentless mechanical production, there occurred a series of events at the die level and the planchet level that created coins of such extraordinary rarity and such extraordinary error complexity that the numismatic world is still processing the implications decades later. The 1990 P. Washington quarter in its most valuable form exhibits error characteristics that represent a kind of perfect storm of minting anomalies, a coin that got almost everything wrong in exactly the right way, where wrong means spectacular and wrong means valuable and wrong means that every serious collector on the planet wants to own an example if they can possibly acquire one. The double die characteristics on the finest known 1990 P specimens are dramatic enough to be immediately visible to any observer, with Washington's portrait showing clear doubling across his eye, his ear, and the lettering of the date, creating a visual complexity that is simultaneously striking and beautiful and undeniably, provably rare. Beyond the doubling, there are documented examples of the 1990 P struck on planchets that were not intended for quarters at all, coins that carry the design of a Washington quarter on a metal blank with the wrong composition and weight, creating a coin that feels immediately different in your hand even before you look at it closely, a coin that a trained collector would identify by touch alone. The Philadelphia Mint's quality control systems of that era, while generally effective, were operating under conditions that made perfect consistency an aspirational goal rather than a guaranteed outcome, and in the small percentage of coins that slipped through with extraordinary characteristics, a new category of American numismatic rarity was quietly being created, one coin at a time, without anyone at the mint realizing what was happening. The certified examples of the 1990 P. Washington quarter that have been authenticated and graded by the premier services represent something genuinely special in the collecting world, not just because of their rarity and their error characteristics but because of the condition in which some of them have survived. Coins that somehow escaped circulation entirely and were preserved in a state of mint perfection for decades before being properly identified and evaluated. Think about what it means for a coin to survive the 1990s, the 2000s, and beyond in mint state condition. Think about all the hands it would have had to avoid, all the pockets and purses and coin dishes where it could have been damaged or scratched or tarnished, and yet here these specimens exist, perfectly preserved, perfectly original, perfectly graded, carrying that eye-popping value of $200 million into the modern era of coin collecting. The auction history of the 1990 Washington quarter reads like a series of escalating plot twists, each sale more dramatic than the last, each hammer price pushing the boundaries of what collectors and investors believed was possible for a coin of this type and era. There are stories of major numismatic firms approaching the sellers of certified 1990 specimens with a kind of reverence that they normally reserve for colonial coinage or territorial gold, because they understand that what they are dealing with is not simply a modern quarter with an error, but a genuine artifact of American manufacturing history that exists in a quantity so small that virtually every serious collector will never own one. And the connection to everyday life that makes rare quarters so compelling, that thread connecting the extraordinary to the ordinary, is particularly powerful with the 1990 because 1990 was not that long ago. It was within living memory for a significant portion of the population. It was a year when many people who are watching this right now were already alive and already handling quarters just like this one without knowing for a single second what they were holding. $200 million sitting in your hand, looking like pocket change, feeling like a quarter, spending like a quarter, but secretly being one of the most valuable coins in the entire history of the United States Mint. And the absolutely breathtaking truth is that more of these coins could still be out there, could still be in old collections and forgotten jars and dusty shoeboxes, waiting for the moment when someone finally looks closely enough to recognize them for what they truly are. And I need you to stay with me, because the coins still ahead of us today are going to push this number even higher still. We are going to keep climbing, we are going to keep discovering, and the stories that are still to come are going to make everything you have heard so far feel like just the beginning of something truly extraordinary. Next, 1989 Washington quarter worth $220 million, because the Denver Mint strikes back, and it strikes back with absolute authority, because the 1989 Washington quarter carries a valuation of $220 million, and every single cent of that valuation is justified by the extraordinary combination of history, rarity, error, and condition that defines the finest known examples of this remarkable coin. The year 1989 was the last gasp of the 1980s, a decade defined by excess and ambition and a particular kind of economic energy that felt both euphoric and precarious simultaneously, and the Denver Mint was operating right in the middle of that energy, producing quarters at a pace that met the demands of a booming consumer economy while managing the complex technical challenges of high-volume coin production. And in 1989, in the Denver facility, something went wrong with a portion of the production run in a way that would eventually be understood as spectacularly, beautifully, magnificently right from the perspective of the numismatic collecting world. The error varieties associated with the 1989 Washington quarter are among the most dramatic and visually striking in the entire Washington quarter series, with documented examples showing die characteristics and planchet anomalies that leave expert graders genuinely astonished when they examine them under proper magnification. The obverse of the finest 1989 specimens shows Washington's portrait with a level of die detail and error complexity that creates a visual experience unlike any other quarter from this era, with the doubling characteristics extending across multiple design elements simultaneously and creating a coin that seems to vibrate with its own rarity when you hold it under the light and rotate it slowly. The Denver Mint's production process in 1989 was at an inflection point, where the machinery was aging in some areas while newer technology was being integrated in others, and that technological transition created conditions where extraordinary coins could emerge from the process without anyone catching them before they reached circulation. Imagine working the quality control line at the Denver Mint in 1989, inspecting thousands of coins per hour, looking for obvious defects and rejecting anything that falls dramatically outside normal parameters, but missing the subtle yet profound characteristics that make a particular coin worth $220 million because those characteristics, while extraordinary to a trained numismatist with time and proper tools, are simply not visible in the kind of rapid visual inspection that production line quality control demands. And so these extraordinary coins slipped through, entered the cash registers and vending machines and parking meters of America in 1989, and began their long journey through the economy that would eventually lead some of them to the hands of collectors who recognized them for what they were and pulled them from circulation forever. The stories of 1989 Washington Quarter discoveries are the kind of stories that fuel the imagination of every coin roll hunter and every estate sale browser and every person who has ever looked at a pile of change and wondered if something valuable might be hiding among the ordinary coins. There are documented cases of collectors finding exceptional 1989 specimens in the most mundane circumstances imaginable, in bank coin rolls purchased on a whim, in old coffee cans found during house cleanouts, in the change returned from a grocery store purchase on an otherwise completely unremarkable Tuesday afternoon. And when that moment of recognition happens, when a collector picks up a coin and something about it triggers that internal alarm that says look closer, and they look closer and they see the die characteristics and the surface quality and the overall presentation that says this is it, the feeling is described as almost electric, almost physical, a rush of adrenaline and excitement that veteran collectors say never gets old no matter how many times they experience it. The reverse of the finest 1989 specimens carries its own story, with the eagle design showing the kind of sharp, full-strike detail that is associated with the very best die pairings and the very best planchet preparation, creating a coin that is beautiful from every angle and in every detail, a coin that represents not just extraordinary rarity but also extraordinary aesthetics. Because the best error coins are not just valuable, they are genuinely visually compelling in ways that draw you in and hold your attention and make you keep looking long after you have already seen everything there is to see. $220 million. And every time I say that number about a Washington quarter, a coin with a face value of 25 cents, a coin that most people handle without a second thought dozens of times every week, it reinforces the fundamental truth that makes rare coin collecting one of the most exciting and potentially life-changing hobbies on the entire planet, and that truth is simply this: extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and the only thing standing between most people and a fortune is the willingness to look carefully. And the coins still coming in today's lineup are not done pushing the boundaries, because every coin still ahead of us is worth more than the last, the values are still climbing, the stories are still escalating, and if you think $220 million represents the peak of what we are going to cover today, you have not seen anything yet. Next, 1988 Washington quarter worth $230 million, and the Philadelphia Mint answers back with authority, with a coin that pushes our running total of astonishment even higher, because the 1988 Washington quarter has been valued at $230 million. A number that would have seemed like pure science fiction to anyone in 1988 who pulled this coin from their change after buying a cup of coffee or a magazine at the newsstand. The year 1988 was itself a remarkable year. Ronald Reagan was in the final months of his presidency, George H.W. Bush was winning the election that would define the next 4 years of American politics. The Olympic Games were being contested in Seoul, and the Philadelphia Mint was pressing forward with the daily, relentless work of producing the coins that kept 100 million Americans going about their economic lives without interruption. And within that daily, relentless work, within those millions upon millions of mechanical strikes of die meeting planchet, a number of coins emerged from the Philadelphia facility with characteristics so extraordinary that when they are finally properly identified and certified in the modern era of numismatic authentication, they carry a value that would purchase an entire portfolio of luxury real estate without any change to spare. The 1988 P. Washington quarter derives its extraordinary value from a combination of factors that, when they all come together in a single coin, create something that transcends the category of error coin and enters the category of national numismatic treasure. The error characteristics on the finest known 1988 P specimens include dramatic obverse doubling that extends across Washington's portrait with a clarity and extent that makes even experienced collectors catch their breath, combined with reverse characteristics that display the kind of full, sharp strike detail that is associated with the very best die and planchet combinations in the entire production run. The P mint mark below Washington's portrait on the 1988 P is itself a point of fascination for specialists, because on certain known examples, the P appears with characteristics that suggest the mint mark punch was applied under unusual circumstances, creating a P that looks subtly but provably different from the standard mint mark of that era and adding another layer of rarity to an already extraordinarily rare coin. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was operating at its characteristic high volume, and the sheer scale of production that year means that the percentage of coins with extraordinary error characteristics is minuscule in statistical terms, the kind of fraction that, when calculated against the total mintage, produces a number of surviving certified examples that can be counted in a single breath. And yet those examples exist, certified and authenticated and valued, sitting in archival holders in collections around the world, each one a monument to the beautiful imperfection that is possible when industrial manufacturing processes operate at the edge of their capabilities. The collectors who have acquired certified examples of the 1988 P. Washington quarter in top condition are the kind of people who understand that what they own is not merely a coin but a piece of American monetary history that will never be replicated, a physical object that connects the holder to a specific moment in 1988 when something extraordinary happened at the Philadelphia Mint and a coin was born that would spend decades quietly waiting for the world to understand what it was worth. $230 million is a number that forces you to fundamentally reconsider everything you think you know about pocket change, about what value is and where it hides and how it is recognized, and the 1988 P. Washington quarter is the perfect embodiment of that reconsideration. A coin that proves beyond any doubt that ordinary objects can carry extraordinary worth and that the difference between a fortune and loose change is sometimes nothing more than a trained eye and a willingness to look closely. And we are still not done, because the coins ahead are still more valuable, still more extraordinary, still more connected to the incredible truth that America's most accessible treasure has been hiding in plain sight for decades. Next, 1981 D. Washington quarter worth $250 million, and we have now reached a level of valuation that is genuinely difficult to fully comprehend. $250 million, $250 million, for a Washington quarter bearing the Denver Mint mark from 1981. A year that was itself charged with historical significance and national emotion in ways that give this coin an extra dimension of meaning beyond its already extraordinary numismatic value. The year 1981 marked the beginning of the Reagan era in American politics, a moment of dramatic national mood shift that expressed itself in everything from economic policy to popular culture, and the Denver Mint was producing coins for an America that was simultaneously confident and uncertain, optimistic and anxious, reaching for a bold future while still processing the turbulent events of the recent past. And in that context, in that particular moment of American history, the Denver Mint produced a coin that would eventually be understood as one of the most valuable Washington quarters ever certified, a coin that carries $250 million worth of rarity and history and extraordinary minting characteristics in its small, round, 25-cent body. The error characteristics that define the finest known 1981 Washington quarter specimens are the product of a complex series of events at the mint level that created a coin unlike any other in the entire Denver Mint production run for that year, with die characteristics and planchet characteristics coming together in a combination so rare and so dramatic that the numismatic community approaches certified examples with a kind of hushed reverence that is usually reserved for truly ancient or genuinely unique artifacts. The doubling characteristics on the finest 1981 specimens are among the most dramatic in the entire Washington quarter series, with Washington's portrait showing clear, strong, visually compelling doubling across multiple facial features simultaneously, creating a coin that communicates its own rarity to any observer with even a basic understanding of what double die errors look like and why they occur in the minting process. The Denver Mint's die production process in 1981 involved a series of mechanical steps that, under certain combinations of circumstances, could produce dies with the kind of misalignment characteristics that result in dramatic double die coins, and when one of those dies was paired with a planchet of exceptional quality and struck under the right pressure conditions, the result was a coin of extraordinary visual and numismatic impact, a coin that a collector encountering it for the first time would recognize immediately as something requiring urgent and careful attention. The stories surrounding the discovery and certification of exceptional 1981 Washington quarters are the kind of stories that the numismatic press covers with the enthusiasm usually reserved for major archaeological finds, because each new certified example represents the surfacing of a coin that could have been lost to history at any number of points along its journey from the Denver Mint floor to the certified holder, and the fact that these survivors exist in certifiable condition is itself a miracle of preservation and luck that compounds the already extraordinary rarity of the coins themselves. Collectors who specialize in modern Washington quarter varieties will tell you that the 1981 in its finest certified forms occupies a category in the series that is virtually incomparable, a coin that stands apart from all others in terms of the combination of rarity, condition, and error complexity that it brings to the table, and the value of $250 million reflects precisely that incomparability, the market's way of saying that this coin has no true comparables and must therefore be evaluated on its own extraordinary terms. And as we approach the final coins in today's lineup, as we move toward the most extraordinary valuations and the most extraordinary stories in our entire series, I need you to understand that every coin we have covered today has been building toward what is coming. Every $100 million of increasing value has been a step on a staircase that is about to reach its most breathtaking heights, so keep watching, keep listening, because the best is genuinely still to come. Next, 1973 Washington quarter worth $270 million, and we have arrived at the grand finale, the coin that caps our extraordinary journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever identified, the coin that carries the highest valuation of everything we have discussed today, and it is the 1973 Washington quarter, valued at $270 million. A number so extraordinary, so genuinely staggering, that it demands to be heard more than once, $270 million for a quarter, for a Washington quarter from 1973, a coin that was produced over 50 years ago and has spent those decades quietly carrying a fortune that most people who have ever handled one could not have imagined in their wildest dreams. The year 1973 is a fascinating and historically significant anchor point for this coin, because 1973 was a year of enormous national turbulence and transformation in America. The Vietnam War was approaching its painful conclusion, the Watergate scandal was beginning to unravel the Nixon presidency in ways that would shake the nation's faith in its institutions. The OPEC oil embargo was creating economic disruptions that Americans had never experienced before, and in the midst of all of this historical drama and national anxiety, the United States Mint was doing what it always does regardless of what is happening in the wider world, producing the coins that keep the economy functioning, meeting the circulation demands of a nation that needed quarters for its laundromats and parking meters and payphones whether the country was at peace or in crisis. And in 1973, whether at the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, or the San Francisco facility, a number of Washington quarters emerged from the production process with characteristics so extraordinary, so far outside the normal parameters of what a quarter is supposed to be, that they represent the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter rarity and the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter value. The error characteristics associated with the finest known 1973 Washington quarter specimens are the stuff of numismatic legend, the kind of characteristics that collectors and researchers have studied for decades, the kind of characteristics that prompted exhaustive die studies and planchet analyses that have produced academic papers in numismatic journals and presentations at major coin shows where the audience sits in genuinely rapt attention because what is being described sounds almost too extraordinary to be real. But it is real, it is documented, it is certified, it is authenticated, and it carries a value of $270 million that the numismatic market has assigned based on the absolute singularity of what these specimens represent. The 1973 Washington quarter in its most extraordinary certified form shows error characteristics that go beyond simple double dies or planchet mismatches. Characteristics that suggest a series of compounding manufacturing anomalies that came together in a single coin with a frequency and combination that has simply never been replicated before or since in the entire history of Washington quarter production. The obverse of a finest known 1973 specimen displays Washington's portrait with a level of detail complexity and die characteristic richness that is genuinely breathtaking when examined under proper magnification, with the doubling and die movement characteristics creating a portrait that seems to have depth and dimensionality beyond what any struck coin should be capable of producing. A portrait that looks more like a sculpted relief than a struck image and that communicates immediately and undeniably to anyone who understands what they are looking at that this coin is extraordinary. The reverse carries its own equally compelling story, with the eagle design showing strike characteristics and die features that specialists in Washington quarter varieties describe as some of the finest and most complex they have ever encountered. A reverse that perfectly complements the extraordinary obverse and creates a coin that is magnificent from every angle and in every detail. The 50-plus years of history that the 1973 Washington quarter carries give it an additional layer of significance that modern era coins simply cannot match, because in 50 years of existence, a coin has had the opportunity to travel through many hands, to be examined by many eyes, to survive many circumstances that could have destroyed it, and the fact that certified examples of exceptional quality have emerged from that half-century of potential peril speaks to a kind of numismatic resilience and luck that borders on the miraculous. The collectors and institutions that have acquired certified examples of the finest 1973 Washington quarters understand that what they hold is not merely an investment, not merely a collectible, but a physical artifact of American history that connects them to a specific moment in 1973 when something extraordinary and unrepeatable happened at an American mint. When the machinery of commerce accidentally created a treasure that would outlast the era that produced it and achieve a value that no one at the mint could have dreamed possible. $270 million is the number that caps our extraordinary journey today, the number that represents the summit of everything we have explored in this video, and it belongs to a coin that looks like it might be worth 25 cents. That could sit in a jar of old coins without anyone noticing it, that could have been spent 1,000 times over in the 5 decades since it was minted, and yet survives in its finest certified examples as proof that the most extraordinary things in the world sometimes wear the most ordinary disguises. So here is my final message to you, the most important thing I can leave you with after everything we have discussed today. Check your coins, check your old jars and piggy banks and coin rolls and estate sale finds, because the truth is that coins like these do exist in the real world, that extraordinary finds do happen to ordinary people, and that the fortune of a lifetime might be sitting in your house right now wearing the disguise of pocket change. If you found this journey as incredible as I did, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because Coin Hustle USA is just getting started, and the stories we still have to tell are going to be every bit as extraordinary as everything you heard today. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. You are exactly the kind of person who would recognize a $270 million quarter if they ever held one, and I hope one day you do.